hope you had a great weekend. We just got in tonight from Arizona via Atlanta. We spent the weekend out there. Dane had a continuing education course. His mastermind group met out there. A bunch of dentists who are also business owners that get together and collaborate for ideas on how to better their practices. So we've had a very busy weekend, and James had so much fun with his grandparents in Atlanta. But I feel like our time schedule is all off today. Hi, Tracy. Because we were on Mountain Time, and then we went 2 hours forward to Atlanta time, and then back an hour to Central, and so we're super messed up and got up really early based on, I think we got up around 5 Arizona time, so, and they don't do daylight savings, which is weird, but anyway, so I wanted to put together a fairly simple dinner for us tonight that was like nice and satisfying after a long day of traveling, but also a little bit healthier and on the lighter side too, so I'm kind of making a healthier lasagna with a lot of veggies in it. I'm going to flip this around for you guys, and I'm doing a lot of shortcuts today to make things easy. So I went ahead and I just had some refrigerated lasagna sheets. Publix just started carrying these, which I'm so excited about. These do say that no boiling is required and they're ready to bake, but the recipe I'm using said you could use dried or fresh lasagna, and it just said to cook either one. So I basically just boiled these for a minute or two because it wouldn't take any time at all. So super quick. I just put on some water to boil, salted it, and I let these go for like a minute or two so that they're just a little bit undercooked, and they'll finish cooking in the oven. But that's about half a pound, or I have 8 sheets of lasagna there all set to go. And then here I have about 4 ounces, so a quarter pound of diced prosciutto. So you can use prosciutto or pancetta, either one of those would work. And I actually did a shortcut. I had some chopped prosciutto already in our fridge, so I didn't even have to chop it up and prep it. I just dumped the whole thing in the pan and sauteed that on medium for about 4 minutes, so that's nice and browned. All right, so I'm actually going to turn this back on to low for a minute. Here we go. And I'm going to add a little bit of arugula. So I maybe have about a quarter bag of arugula here. So I'm just kind of using up a bunch of the veggies that I have on hand after traveling for the weekend. And then I also have about a quarter bag of baby spinach. All right, so I'm going to dump those in, and I'm going to just mix those in with our prosciutto there. All right, I'm going to turn this up to medium. And I'm actually going to put a lid on this for just a minute so it'll kind of steam up and kind of start to wilt. It'll be easier to stir it. I won't have to watch it as much. So over here, I have some leftover asparagus that I roasted right before we went out of town, so I'm just using that up. I chopped those up into about, a half-inch pieces, and I'm going to throw that in with the other veggies, so we'll have a nice mixture of veggies there. We'll have a very green lasagna, but I was originally planning to do a complete asparagus lasagna, but since we only had a little bit of asparagus on hand, I didn't feel like cooking a whole bunch extra, and we had those other veggies in the fridge. I decided to do a mixture, and I really like spinach in pasta dishes. I think that goes really well. So if I was going to just do the asparagus and I was going from raw, I'd go ahead and chop the asparagus up into little pieces, and I would just saute that in the same pan with the pancetta or the prosciutto. I'd cook the prosciutto for a bit and then remove that from the pan, and then cook the basically saute the asparagus in some olive oil for probably about 4 minutes, and then add back in the prosciutto or pancetta after that. All right, and then right here I have basically some sun-dried tomato pesto and some basil pesto. So I have 2 8-ounce jars here. I did about a half of each jar, and so I have about 4 ounces of each of the sun-dried tomato pesto and the basil pesto, and I'm going to mix that together, so I'll have about 8 ounces total. So So instead of using fresh basil and pureeing that with olive oil and sun-dried tomatoes, which is what I was thinking about doing originally, since it's a late night and we're all tired, I'm just doing a shortcut and I'm using the already prepared pesto. So we have, the sun-dried tomatoes in here and the basil. I think there's some sunflower seed oil instead of olive oil, but that won't make a huge difference. And there's pine nuts, and there might be some walnuts in one of them, some Parmesan. But I'm also going to add a quarter cup of grated Parmesan cheese to that as well, and stir that in. So our sauce is going to be all set with this pesto and the cheese. So super easy. And then I'm going to come back and check on our veggies and see how they're doing. All right. Stir those in a little more. The prosciutto smells really good. If y'all can't tell, if you've been watching any of my videos or eaten any of the meals I've cooked, prosciutto is one of my favorite ingredients. I love cooking Italian, and I really like prosciutto. I really like that salty flavor and how it doesn't have the smoky flavor that bacon has. All right, so this is perfect. We're getting our arugula and our spinach all nice and wilted. And so I'm actually going to turn this to low since that's looking so nice. And I'm going to add in our asparagus just to warm it up. Of course, this is going into the oven though, so it doesn't have to be 100% warm. That's looking so delicious. Okay, I'm going to turn that off. And I'm also going to add about half a cup of ricotta cheese. And this is actually reduced fat ricotta cheese. It's a little bit healthier than full fat, and you don't see the huge difference in the reduced fat versus the full fat like you see in the fat-free. I wouldn't recommend fat-free. All right, let's finish scooping that in there. Yum, yum. Okay. And now everything is warm, and so the cheese is just going to melt in really nicely. Just give that a good stir so everything's mixed in and incorporated. All right, I'm so excited to try this. We went ahead and made James dinner since he's on Atlanta time, and he was already hungry since he's been on Atlanta time this whole time and not going back and forth between the time zones as much as us. It's still about 7 o'clock in Arizona. Okay, but to James it's like 9 o'clock. So he'll be eating his dinner early and going to bed a little early. All right, so that looks delicious. All the ricotta cheese is just mixed in. We have all those nice green veggies, and then we'll get that meaty flavor from the little bit of prosciutto that we have. All right. And then we already have our pesto set up with the sun-dried tomato pesto and the basil pesto, and then a little bit of Parmesan cheese. And then here I have 8 ounces of freshly grated whole milk mozzarella cheese. I had a ball of mozzarella cheese in the fridge that I needed to go ahead and use up, but if I hadn't done that, I would have just used some pre-shredded mozzarella cheese that I had in a bag in the fridge. I was going to use that first, but when I checked the expiration date, so I was like, well, I need to go ahead and use this one up first. So I spent a few minutes just grating that, but otherwise I would have just had a pre-bagged, pre-shredded mozzarella cheese. Super easy. Okay. And we're going to start layering these, and I also have some grated Parmesan here I'm going to use as well. All right, so first of all, I'm going to come over here to our baking dish, and I've preheated our oven to 350. Yeah, 350. All right, so I'm going to use about half, so about 4 ounces of our pesto mixture on the bottom of the pan. And I'm just going to spread it around. That smells really good too. I love the smell of basil. And then you'll get the nuttiness from the Parmesan that's in this, and then the pine nuts as well. And then you'll get the little bit of sharpness from the sun-dried tomatoes, and that makes it a little bit sweet too, although I find basil sweet as well. So we'll get a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of nuttiness, and you'll taste the herbs as well. So that'll be a really yummy mixture. All right, awesome. So that's about half. And I'm going to go ahead and layer our lasagna sheets. I'm going to do 2 lasagna sheets per layer. So these are just slightly undercooked. Okay, these don't have to be perfectly aligned. And one of my sheets broke a little bit, so I'm going to put that one on the bottom so that it won't make as much of a difference. Alright, so we have our first layer here. Yum, yum, yum. Okay, now we're going to do about, I'm just going to kind of press that in there. We're going to do about half of our asparagus and spinach and arugula and the prosciutto and the ricotta. We're going to do about half of that. Homemade lasagna was one of my favorite things growing up. My grandmother makes her own lasagna, and she taught me and my brother how to do it as well. She got the recipe from an Italian housewife when she went to visit my grandfather, who was stationed with the Air Force in northern Italy. So he was stationed both in Vietnam. He was like one of those MASH doctors, except they issued him a gun, but he had to keep it in his locker unless they were attacked. He wasn't allowed to use it. I always think that's kind of funny. But he was a surgeon over there, and probably a surgeon or did a variety of things over in Italy as well. He's an OBGYN, so he's a great OBGYN, and then he also specializes in surgery. Still practicing, too, at 80 years old, which is really impressive, although he just retired from surgery last year. And he still practices a couple days in the office, which is amazing. All right, so that looks pretty good. Most of that's pretty evenly sized. But anyway, so my grandmother picked up the recipe, and so she and my grandfather, make their own noodles, and they grow their own tomatoes to make their tomato and meat sauce, and everything's just delicious. And that's what they'll make huge batches of it and freeze it. And I'm a huge fan of their lasagna. It's more of a northern Italian lasagna because it has lots of cheese and not quite as heavy on the meat sauce. Like the meat and tomato sauce is light, and then the cheese is more of the star ingredient, like mozzarella and Parmesan. So here, our stars will be the cheese and the veggies. I'm going to sprinkle about 1/3 of our shredded mozzarella. This will have a lot of nice flavor and moistness since it's fresh mozzarella. I like slicing fresh mozzarella too and putting it, like doing like a caprese salad or putting it on some homemade pizza. That's really delicious too. Yum, 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 yum. Okay. And we're also going to add a 1/4 cup of our freshly grated Parmesan. But I got the store to grate it for me, so I didn't have to do that. And so that saves us a bit of time. Nice, nice. Oh, okay, so that's about a 1/4 cup. We're just going to sprinkle this over the top here. All right, that's so good. All right, and we're going to go ahead and layer another layer of lasagna sheets. Oops. All right. It's all right if the edges overlap a little bit or come up on the edge. I kind of like when the lasagna comes up over the edge, especially on top, because it gets nice and crispy. I love kind of pinching the edges off on the top of a nicely brown homemade lasagna. All right. So we've got another sheet there. And so we're going to repeat this layer again. We're going to do the rest of our asparagus and spinach and arugula and ricotta cheese and the diced prosciutto. One thing I started doing in December, a little bit more aggressively than usual, and I'm going to try to keep going into the New Year's, like really making use of just those extra leftover ingredients you might have in your fridge or your pantry, even if it's a small amount. A lot of times you can combine it with other ingredients you have to make another meal so nothing goes to waste. All right, that's pretty good. And I'm going to do another 1/3 of the mozzarella. So on the nights where we eat later than James, I don't feel so bad about splurging and doing dishes that have dairy in them, especially ones with cheese, which Dan and I still find is a weakness. We haven't been able to give up cheese completely. So if James has eaten earlier and something different, it's a little bit easier for me to justify making a splurge dairy meal for us. Otherwise, we tend to try to sit down at the same time for dinner. I think family dinners are really important, and we all try to eat pretty much the same thing, which is easier on cooking, and then James feels like, he's, doing what Mommy and Daddy are doing too, which he really likes. All right, and we're going to do another 1/4 cup. Here's my measuring cup. Another 1/4 cup of our grated Parmesan here. It's a little bit overflowing of a 1/4 cup, but that's all right. Parmesan is delicious. And this really isn't super heavy on the cheese. I mean, there's a bit, but it's not super heavy. I think there's more vegetables than anything than this. They're just cooked down, so it's not as fluffy as they were before they were cooked. All right, and we're going to do one more layer of our lasagna sheets. This is the first time I've used these refrigerated pasta sheets. So I'm going to, like I told y'all earlier, I boiled them for just a minute or two to where they're just a little bit undercooked, and they'll finish cooking in the oven. Since it's the first time, I wanted to be sure that everything was done, but the next time I use these sheets, I might try not pre-cooking them at all and just sticking them in the oven as is, since the package says that's okay, and then comparing to see how it turns out. All right. And now we're going to use the rest of our basil pesto and sun-dried tomato pesto and Parmesan. We're just going to put the rest of this on the top. So it's about 1/2 cup, about 4 ounces of this. The other half is on the very bottom of our dish if you just joined us. All right, and I'm just going to spread this around. All right, that looks great. Yum, yum, yum. The one reason I pre-cooked the noodles was that this dish is not swimming in sauce. A lot of times if you just have a ton of tomato sauce or meat sauce or whatever, that'll help the noodles cook in the oven. It'll just absorb the water. But as you can see, like, there's not a whole lot of extra liquid in this dish. So that's one reason I went ahead and pre-cooked the noodles. And I'm going to do the other third of our mozzarella. I started with 8 ounces of mozzarella, and I did about a third between each layer, and then a third on top. All right, and so about another 1/4 cup of the Parmesan on top, but since this is the last one, I'm just going to sprinkle it. Not necessarily measure. Just going to sprinkle it till it covers the top. So if you want more or less cheese, you can always do more or less, whatever your preference is. But I kind of like having a nice bubbly golden crust on top. I find that very delicious, so I like to do a little extra on top. Oops. All right, I might have used more like a third or a half a cup on the top, but I think that'll turn out really good. We'll have a nice crusty top. All right, that looks yummy. I can't wait to see how it turns out and taste it. And I look forward to taking some pictures of it and sharing the end results with y'all. So I'm going to pop this in the oven, I believe for about 20 minutes. Let me double check how long I'm going to put it in the oven real quick. Yeah, just pop it in the oven until it's heated through and the cheese is melted at 350 for about 20 minutes, and then check it. If you want to cook it longer, if you don't think the cheese is quite melted and bubbly and browned enough, you can always cook it a little bit longer. So y'all enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bon appetit. Have a great evening.